Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of Poker Face Episode 7, The Future of the Sport. This was directed by Ian B. MacDonald, who did Episode 3, The Stall, which I thought was a great episode, and this was written by Joe Lawson. Before I jump into this review, just want to give a reminder to please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 30K by the end of March so I can get that Rotten Tomatoes critic approval and be a part of that. It would be a dream come true, and I really appreciate any help I can get. So if you could subscribe or share these videos anywhere, I'd really appreciate it. Now, the two big guest stars in this episode are the great Tim Blake Nelson, who's a great guest star, and he's great in anything he's in. I always enjoy watching him. He plays Keith Owens here. And we have Charles Melton, Mr. Riverdale himself, playing Davis McDowell, who actually, to me, was incredible in this episode. It was really cool to see him do a role like this and do a really good job playing this antagonist. Now, out of all the Poker Face episodes so far, this was the one that I liked so much more on second watch, and it's because you really realize how much thought and detail went into this episode. I didn't think on first watch I enjoyed it that much, and then I watched it again and I loved it. I'm going to go into why. So you see in the beginning that with Keith, he's got that shaky hand right before the race. So again, I'm a sucker for anything that comes full circle, right? And that you set up things and have a lot of payoffs. This show, not just this episode, but this show in general has been great at having so many setups that pay off, so you feel satisfied when watching it. But they do a good job now of bringing his daughter Katie into the storyline, and they do a good job at making you think it's a simple story first, and then as it goes on, you learn more and more, and there's a lot of twists here that you're figuring out like Charlie is, and it makes it that much more interesting. And we see that Katie, his daughter, thought Keith was retiring, but he's not. So it sets up that Katie's even better driver than her father, and that she's also a threat to this character of Davis, who wants the Owens just out of his way, out of his career line, that they're always in the way of him going to the next step. But it's so important that Keith brings up his flow he lost mid-season, and that's explaining the shaky hand. He can't get out of his head that someone is out there better than him, meaning Davis, and he's lost the race before he even starts. So this all is to show us later on when Charlie gets her karma towards Davis and where he was with his hand shaking. We'll break down when we get there, but it's all setting that up. So what happens here, which is interesting, is that when Keith has the idea to sabotage Davis's car, it goes a little haywire for him because he thinks that by calling the tow company that Davis was going to be the one to come out, not his mom. So he doesn't recognize it's the mom coming out. So that's why he wasn't worried that Davis might catch him in the middle of the night. And Davis does. That's one of the first big twists of the episode, that Davis actually saw Keith catch him, because it would seem kind of boring if it was just straight up Keith sabotaging his car and Charlie's going to figure it out. No, there's more layers to all of this, and that there's an even worse antagonist here than Keith. I am curious what you guys think, because his clear intention was just to make Davis crash, right? But did he care if he was to die? Did he really have any thought of that? I'm not sure. I'm taking it as he didn't care, but I don't think he was like making that the target of trying to kill him. I think he was just trying to have him crash because he did not screw with the seatbelt like a Davis character did, where he actually went the next step against Katie to make sure she gets seriously hurt by screwing with the seatbelt. But I'm curious if you guys read on that with Keith. Now, I love that they went back to when we see Charlie and it cuts to her, that we get that nice Charlie theme music. She's like, again, lightens everything up. She's our hope in all these episodes to figure out this mess of all these just bad people she's dealing with. But I like that it opens with her working at a go-kart place and there's just puke she's cleaning up. And what's fun to see is that her coworker here is this character, Randy, who is Harrison from Dexter New Blood. So that was like, I was taking me a second, like, who is this guy? I know this guy. So it was cool to see him. He's a really good actor, and I thought he was hysterical in this episode. All the moments with Randy. A couple of things that stood out to me about Randy was when he's standing there with Davis, and Davis is doing this whole act to Charlie like he's out now to just get Keith and frame Keith for everything. And I love when Randy's like with him. He's like, yeah, let's do this. He's like, we're going to get those candles lit up. Like, that was so great. And then he had another great line where he said his uncle had blacklight, not for the reason they need it, for something else. I thought that was just so funny, and it was thrown in so fast. But see, there's little things you see on rewatch that they just set up so much stuff, especially Davis always has this picture of his grandpa in the car who taught him to race. This is going to be the thing that really gets him caught at the end of the day by Charlie. And then we also see Charlie calls out a kid for saying he has cancer, which was a lie, so he can cut the line to race the car. And then she says to Davis explaining this, I'm like that dog that can smell, and he cuts her off and says cancer. So that's where cancer dog comes from. And then later she regrets that she made a metaphor with that because they keep saying it. But it makes it so interesting that Davis learns early on that she has this lie detector skill. We've seen this in previous episodes in Rusted Metal and in episode 1 where the antagonist knows she can read the lie. But to me, this worked the best because it clearly set up that you thought he was on her side at first because he knew this information. So like, oh yeah, why would they have him know that? But it also set up Davis to be trying to outsmart her the rest of the episode because he knows she can do this. So he's trying to use that to his advantage and use Charlie to actually just get Keith framed for all of it. So I thought that was a really interesting take and a smart way to go about this. And that's what's so impressive about this show. Like, every episode is feeling different. It's not just staying to a formula. There's always a little thing that flips on its head, and I'm sure that's credit to Rian Johnson as a showrunner that he's making sure that, okay, what's going to be different about this episode to just the regular format? If something happens, Charlie figures it out. Now, my favorite payoff, though, and setup of this episode is when Davis is showing Charlie on the arcade machine how to just race and how it's not just circles and it's more complicated than that. But it pays off because this is where he's saying to her, trust the car, trust the car. So this comes later when Davis is chasing after Charlie in his car when she's leaving the garage, and she starts saying that to herself, trust the car, trust the car. And she does that same tight turn, which was amazing, from what she did in the arcade game. And I love even before that when she's driving, she says, I'm trusting you, you piece of S. That was maybe the best line delivery of Natasha Lyonne this season yet. It was just so well thought out that they had that whole arcade scene that seemed almost just like filling some time to actually pay off big time later on. That she would use it against him, everything he taught her. And just little moments too, like Katie racing Davis on the go-kart track and just beating him over and over was showing how much of a threat he was to Davis, but also for Charlie to see that as well. And it's hysterical that this character of Davis gets so frustrated by losing to her on a go-kart track and is threatened by her in the future that this is what leads him to destroying the Owens mailbox. It's just crazy. And it was a nice touch that they mentioned his mother saying, like, no, your grandpa kept this fire on the track, not outside of it. But this is the tragic flaw of Davis's character, that he could not do that. And he admires his grandpa, but he's still not taking away that big lesson from him. Now, when we're actually seeing what Davis did with the car when he finds out that Keith screwed with it, I love the light flickered here when he gets the bad idea to actually now spin this and use it against Katie and screw with the seatbelt. Like, when you saw him do that before the race, you were like, wow, this guy is a terrible person, and suggesting her to race, and this will put her in a coma. And we learn, though, that seatbelt being loose is the reason why the injury was so severe. So he did take it to that next level that not even someone like Keith would do. I also think a great moment was when Charlie went to see Keith after Davis was telling her, like, this was all Keith, to check that if he was lying or not Keith. That when she leaves and sees Keith is lying, that Keith's wife comes home and is like, what was that? And he says nothing, and she says BS, just like Charlie. So it shows too that wives are great at knowing when their husbands are lying, that they are that ultimate lie detector. I thought that was a nice touch. But then we get this other twist that Keith actually confesses to the sabotage he caused on the car. And you see that this is like everything Davis wanted. Davis is like, yes, he put Katie in a coma, thinking she's never going to race again, and then now Keith has confessed to this crime, so he's never going to race again. He's all excited, but he screws up completely because while Charlie's still standing there smoking, Davis says to this kid that the Katie seatbelt malfunction was a freak accident, and she says BS. She knows he's lying, and that just gets everything spinning in her head. Now we also see Davis's mom tells Charlie that she wasn't home when this happened and that he was. So that also gets things spinning. But my only issue with the episode that was just too crazy to me, and I know the show has some crazy stuff in it. Like, yes, everyone was talking about episode 5 where the woman is climbing the whole wall was a little nuts. But this, just in general, of the flow of what Charlie would do, I don't know if I bought that she would take these keys and then break into the house and walk into the garage. I thought there could have been a better way to write her ending up in that garage, because it's a great moment with her confronting Davis in the garage, but there had to be a better way to just maybe just by them talking, even showing up there again and her looking around. I don't know why she had to break into the house. I thought that was just crazy that she took the keys. I know they had set up earlier in the episode that the mom always forgets her keys, so it wouldn't be as suspicious, but I don't know if Charlie would just break into a house like that, especially if the mom lived there too. Maybe if it was just Davis's house, but she actually was friends with the mom, so I don't know, I thought that was weird. But she sees the Big Ed picture on the workbench and knows he didn't put that on the dashboard, so he knew that that was going to be a crash and he wouldn't want the picture ruined. And she calls him out for knowing exactly he used a gear tie and that Keith said that in his confession. So how would he know that? And I love how she just calls him out. She's like, you tried to kill a person, you psycho. And she says, for what? Driving around in a circle? Really? That was a great payoff as well, and her saying that. So the big moment at the end here is she calls him out for all of this right before he's about to race and totally gets in his head. She talks about the flow that Keith was talking about to his wife. She learned it from Donna, and she brings up the big thing is that Katie is going to be okay and she's going to bounce back fast. So she is going to race again. And she's doing all this to destroy Davis's flow. And he's like, I'm the future of the goddamn sport. So this is going into the title of the episode, The Future of the Sport. And she says, we both know that's BS. That was great writing. I love that. And it leads to him with the shaky hand, full circle here. He lost the flow. So there's that karma energy to this where, yeah, he's not going to get maybe arrested for what he did, but he's psyched himself out now in his head. She screwed with him, and now he's never going to be able to race the way he wants to and win because Katie is going to be coming for him on that track. So I thought that was great, and that it was a great way to just change up how she solves the case, and it's not just they get in trouble or... It was different. It was unique, and it was surprising how good that was. Justice served in a different way. I loved it. So I'm actually giving this one a 9.1. I thought it was the second best after The Time of the Monkey, but very close because I gave that one a 9.2. This was just an awesome episode, and I highly suggest if you only saw it once, watch it again. It's so much better on the second watch for this. Let me know what you thought of this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond as many as I can. Please share these reviews. I'd love to get some kind of more just discussion going about this show. I feel like not enough people are watching it. Please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And if you can subscribe, that'd be great. I'm trying to hit that 30K in a quick amount of time, but it would be amazing if we could do this together. And I'll see you next time.